How do I started? Oh, there it goes. So, hi everybody. I think as most of you probably know by now, I'm Jen Zarnock from Columbia Land Trust. I'm one of the natural area managers there. And then I do this stuff on the side. And the other person here who I forced to show his face is Chris Parker from Tall Oaks Environmental, our fearless Ouzel creator. And today we are going to go through tracking property information in Ouzel. Sorry, if I'm a little low energy today, I'm battling a migraine, so I'm less like on fire than I was last time. Somehow, even though this is a more focused talk, I still ended up with like 110 slides. So we have a lot to go through. So I'll go through those. I think, again, it'll go pretty quickly, and then relative to the number, and then we'll have some time for any questions and discussions. Chris will be monitoring the Q&A. So if stuff comes up as you're watching, feel free to put stuff in there. He can answer it in real time, and then we can review stuff at the end as well. This is just sort of a list of the stuff we're going to go through, touching on all of the things related to the properties. And if any of you didn't get to attend or watch Ouzel 101, I'm not really going to go into any sort of high-level Ouzel here, but we have a whole hour-long webinar that we did 2 weeks ago that's posted on our website. And also these are actually links. When I send this out, I hope that those work, with tons of information about the system at large. Okay. We're going to start by talking a little bit about properties, regions, projects, and parcels. So, not everyone organizes stuff the same way, but one of the things that we've learned as we're onboarding other users is that the semantics can get kind of confusing because we all call properties different things and refer to, even if when we call something like technically one thing, sometimes colloquially we refer to it in another way. So I wanted to just kind of ground us in how Ouzel deals with this. And it has this pretty flexible structure that can adapt to all of us. And so that is this as related to properties. We have regions, properties, and parcels. And regions are kind of optional, but a property is our stewardship level sort of designation of area where work happens. And you can assign it to regions. So, excuse me, we do some grouping of ours that I'll show you in a second. And then properties are related to parcels or tax lots. So I thought it would be helpful to look at this just to compare a sort of real world example. So this is our Columbia Land Trust service area. It's very large. You can see these are our ecoregions, the colored polygons, and then those yellow blobs are our properties. In this case, the yellow blobs are just themselves. But in Ouzel and elsewhere in our system, we organize them by both these ecoregions, and then we group them sort of geographically into what we call stewardship areas. We refer to our properties as stewardship units or units. And so you'll hear me go back and forth with properties and units. So just know that I mean properties. That's just what we call them internally. And so here is a sort of a visual of that. We have ecoregions, which is this larger region, area, which is a region below it. So you can use regions or not use regions, and you can have more than one region, and they can be hierarchical, if that makes sense. And then within the area, each of these is a property. So here's a property, and here's one of the parcels. So what is a property? Again, it's an area managed as a unit. And typically, this originates in an acquisition project, or a portion of a project or multiple projects. And everybody, again, kind of thinks about this differently, but I wanted to look at this a little bit. So acquisition projects, it's kind of the origin story for our lands. In Ouzel, it is a transaction. So we touched on this in the intro, and we'll do a whole session on this. An acquisition project helps walk you through your due diligence. Technically in Ouzel, you don't have to do that. You could just have a list. You could just have names, and that's kind of your jam. But it is really nice to have all of your stuff connected. And acquisition projects start with parcels or tax lots. So and then this is just another way to visualize that. So this is, the project data, so acquisition project is all kept separate, but it's linked. So you could imagine that if this was a one to many, there would be multiple of these little guys coming off of the project bubble, or it could be a portion of it, meaning this project could link to multiple properties. So in this example, I'm talking about acquisition projects. This is true for other types of projects too. So here's an example of a one-to-one. Here is one conservation easement project, and here's the property. And in this case, actually, since we're looking at it, these are 3 different properties, and this is a stewardship area. So this is, in our world, a region and 3 properties or units that fit within that. One thing that I thought it would be interesting to point out is that as I was doing this, I noticed that those polygons don't match. And I have a data error somewhere. And so one of the lovely benefits of Ouzel is that it can put all this stuff right in front of us, in all of us, instead of just like a GIS person or one individual who's working on, this Woods Landing property, and kind of catch some of those things where we just might have old errors. So here's an example of many projects creating one property. So this is Mill Creek Ridge. This was 5 projects over time, but it's managed as one unit. So this is one property that is, it's all the same habitat, it's all the same access. In fact, I put them in order of acquisition. When we had just 1 and 2, we still treated it as one unit, even though they weren't abutting, because all of those things were the same. And then Clicktack Canyon Phase 2. So this is an example of one project that went into many properties. So this was one phase of an even larger project, multi-phase project, and it became 3 properties. This one right here was actually transferred to a different entity for management. This piece in the middle, you can see that this property is larger than this over here. This was actually combined with a different acquisition into this property. And then this is the 3rd property that came out of that project. And, if there wasn't a giant river dividing it, it probably would have just been one unit. But because the access is different, and in fact, some of the considerations for those properties are different, the natural area manager decided to split those out. And so, there's a lot of flexibility, and it's kind of up to the discretion of the folks who are managing it to make those decisions. Okay, what about parcels? Parcels are the same. So it can be a tax lot or a portion of a tax lot, and those relationships are the same. So here's Haven Island, one parcel, one project, one property. Here is Summit Creek, so this is that property again, and look at all those parcels, right? So a tremendous number of parcels. I'm actually guessing that, I'm not sure why this one is in here, but there's something going on there. It either got split out after the acquisition, or we have a data error, something to look into. And then Waluski, and this one is kind of hard to see. So, and they're backwards, but here's one property, and this is another property easement. And this is one, can't remember why I have 3 in here. I think because this is one parcel. Yeah, this was one parcel, is one parcel as defined by the county, but we split it out into this part, the southern part and the northern part, because that corresponds with our properties. So in this case, this one parcel got split into multiple properties, even though from a county perspective, it's one. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I just wanted to touch on easement outliers. So for us, one easement is always one property. with the exception that where we unfortunately have easements that are able to be subdivided, which just seems like a terrible idea to me, we split them because we now have new landowners, new communications. And so here's an example where this was one project and it has been split. It allowed it to be subdivided. So we now have one landowner here and one landowner here, and it's just cleaner to split them out. I will say we have one where the natural area manager is reluctant to do that. And so she manages hers differently. I think in general, that's not the best idea, but we'll get there. And again, it's flexible, so you can use it how you like, but that is how we deal with it. Okay, let's dig into property details a little bit. So first, I wanted to look at property types. So this is an attribute of property. And it's kind of, you can kind of think of it as a structural tool. So you can create different property types, which can then help you. It helps define your dashboard. You can sort of define custom things for different types. It can inform the checklists for projects within your property. So for example, for different conservation easement monitoring checklist items based on if it's a fee type or an easement type, they can be really simple. You could have one property type. You could have all the same property type. You could have, a lot of folks do easements and fee. Because we like to make things more complicated, have these different designations. They also correspond for us to other definitions, which help inform our management. So for example, a natural area prioritizes conservation values over recreation. In a nature park, they might be on par or slightly different. And so it just helps kind of making those decisions early and formalizing it in this way. And I'm happy to share more about that if anybody wants to know. It could be a whole separate conversation. So more property attributes. So again, so we have, type is one example, but all properties have attributes. And I have this split out into system attributes and custom attributes because there's this handful that are just built into Ouzel. So every property has region, type, acreage, which is computed from your GIS data, your spatial data, and then lead. And you can see here, this is just a little property information widget. You can see some of that stuff, some of that data going on there. We also have these custom attributes. So these can be defined by your land trust. So, for us, some of these are monitoring notes access. We have our Esri global ID in here. So that's our link to our ArcGIS Online sort of syncing up system. It could be other stuff too. You see our accounting code here that corresponds to our finances and timesheets. And it's just like another handy place to have it easily accessible because there's a lot of them. But again, we can use these in different ways to help tailor what you see based on the definition of some of them. So here's an example. We have property leads. We can use these attributes to roll up or query information. So this is a little widget from our stewardship dashboard that shows us how many properties and acres by lead. And if you recall from the intro, when you're live on this widget, you can kind of click in and see more detail, get to those units just from clicking on that, which is nice. And we can do the same type of thing for other attributes. Here's another place where we're using that. So this is the personal user pane. If you recall, it's off to the right in Ouzel. And this, you can see, my zoom bar is in the way, but you can see these little icons correspond to like tabs within my personal user pane. And this is my units or properties tab. And you can see here that it's putting my units that I'm the lead for here right in front of me, so I can access them really easily. It's also putting this other one, which I used to be, but I'm no longer the lead for, but I still have a task there. So there's just different ways that we're able to use these tools that are really handy. Okay, let's look at our property dashboard. So Again, you saw this in the intro if you watched it, but this is our property dashboard. Just a refresher that these are widgets. So we have these tabs across the top that take us into different workspaces. And then we have these widgets, which are just bring kind of like little micro reports that bring information right here in front of us. We're actually working on tweaking some of these a little bit. They're customizable. Again, they're customizable by type. So there's a lot that can be done here. And at the top, you can see this is an example of, this is kind of showing the breadcrumbs of our, of one of our regions. So this is, Green Cathedral is in the Salmon Creek stewardship area. So you can kind of see where you are, which is nice. Here's me as the lead. And I'm showing here that this is actively stewarded property. This is really handy because here's an example of a property that we transferred. And so now here we can see this property was transferred, and now here's who owns it. And so no longer do we have to depend on, finding the person that was around when Columbia Hillsbury transferred, or like digging through the files. We know we used to hold this property, we transferred it. If we can't remember who or when, we can just get, access it right in here, which is really nice. And obviously you can, of course, access it in different parts of Ouzel as well. So we'll dig into the tabs a little bit now. So here's the calendar. And if you attended the intro, this probably looks just a tiny bit different even since then, because we're just continuing to improve things. You see, here's our month view. We have the ability to filter what we're showing here. And we can see these are the months for which there's stuff. And then over here, we can change our views. This is just the week view. And then here is a timeline view. So this is sort of showing a chronology of what's happened on the property. And again, we're working on improving this because this is a really handy little snapshot of kind of what's going on, or what has gone on. And we have plans. We've talked about creating sort of an aggregate calendar for all of Ouzel, because I can imagine that this would be really handy for, say, managers to be able to look at, what's been happening across our holdings at different properties. Here's our map tab. So again, what shows here, excuse me, you're seeing sort of this predefined list of stuff. We can define that based on the property type. So for example, we have a spatial layer that is easement zones. So we wouldn't want to, we wouldn't need to show that on our fee properties, but we could show it on our easement properties. So there's a lot of customization, tailoring that can happen there. You can see this sort of ludicrous number of photo points for this 10-acre property. I don't know why there are so many. You can see these are this is a task that I added, which we'll actually look at later, where I've added the spatial locations of that work to be done. And of course, down here, we can add any other data to look at and interact with in this space. Here's just another example. So this is a property that has some stand data in here. This is data that we are planning on bringing in and using here. We map all of our stands on all of our properties and do sort of a high level monitoring assessment on them to track stewardship trends over time. And it's sort of a course level monitoring tool that we use, which again is a separate talk, which I would love to geek out on at some point. We haven't really built out fully the monitoring tracking piece in here yet, but we can view the spatial data. And I didn't show it here, but if I clicked on this, I can see the attribution behind those data, which is pretty handy. And here is an example of issues. So again, just another type of data. This is a property that has a tremendous number of issues, some of which are probably not issues. When we brought in all of our GIS data, we ended up with some issues that we have to clean up that might have been like, I saw something and I took a point and it's not really necessary. But you can see it's a really nice way to see what's going on properties. And then one thing I wanted to say here is that one of the things that we're all figuring out is how to, so we're right now working on a data management plan to help define what data will Ouzel be authoritative for. And issues is an example of that. So it doesn't make sense for us to have to enter our issue in here and then open up ArcMap or ArcGIS Online and enter the spatial location of that. We can do that all within the system. And then our Esri tools can receive and display any data that we put in Ouzel. So those can go both ways. We can view Esri data in here or other publicly available data in Ouzel and vice versa. This is a site where we have a lot of houseless camps, which is why you see that one. Okay, contacts and communications. So here are our contacts. These are, you'll hear me say this, cards, contact cards. So it's really nice and easy to see who's associated with your property and their role and any key information. So let's see, you can see folks, and you can see folks associated in a couple different ways. So you can add contacts directly into this workspace. You can also see, excuse me, contacts that are associated because of an issue or a project, and they will come right into here. You can also filter them out. So you can see here, this is filtering for active contacts. So I know this is my property that Wes Van Dyke is my new farmer lessee. But my former one isn't showing because I don't need to see him anymore. But if I remove that filter, then I can see everybody whoever's been associated with this property. So I see Steve, who's my old farmer. I also see people like Grace and Clint who are associated with the acquisition project. I don't need to see their contacts all the time, but they're really easily accessible if I'm trying to find that information, which is great. And of course, we can click on those and see stuff in the preview pane here. You also can see people's roles. I didn't point it out on the other one, but there's some people who have multiple roles, and so you can see them all there. This person is a neighbor and a lessee, or a volunteer and a neighbor. And you can see in this detail pane more information. Here's an example of all of my communications with Marty just rolled up here. And of course, you can access that information in other spaces too, but it's just nice to see the stuff associated with this person all right here when you need to. So here is that other space. Here is the communications tab. You can see all the communications related to the property. And again, these include communications added directly to the property or things that might have been added through a project like annual monitoring or an issue. So you get to see those things, have those things sort of collected within their entity of work, right? An issue, you want to be able to see, these are all the communications related to this issue or violation, but you also don't always want to have to dig in to find it. You want to be able to see them here. And so one of the ways I think about it is, you know, even preparing for this, as I was looking for like fun pictures to put in, you know, I would know there was a picture that I had seen, but I had to find the person who knew, you know, I knew it was Emily from a volunteer monitoring training at Mill Creek Ridge, but I didn't know when and I didn't know where. And so we had to like dig through all these folders on our server to find the one thing we were looking for. That's what we want to avoid with this. So we want to be able to say, here's all the stuff, and then provide some tools to be able to easily find it. So you can see we've recently added some filters here. So we're building out these spaces to make, you know, we'll be dialing in, like, are these the right filters? Do we need slightly different filters? Do we need to be able to group things in different ways so we can, you know, temporally or by person or by how it's connected, that sort of thing. So all of those are things that can happen. Again, that same pattern of you can click on this communication, you see this workspace over here. I haven't shown it here, but there's this handy little arrow here in a lot of these places where if you click it, this pane widens. And so we get a little bit of a larger workspace, which, you know, I'm on a very large monitor, so this is great, but on a laptop, sometimes you want a little bit more space. So there's some flexibility there. This is showing, this is actually our demo version. So you can, unfortunately, we don't have any properties called Endive Rock in the Cat's Ear Root region. But this is just an example of a thread. So, here's a communication, or this is, I guess, my Abata test communication. And you can have, if you have a back and forth a few times, you can have it all connected in this thread here, which is really nice. And similarly, if there's any tasks or files associated, those can just be dropped in there too, which is really great. Okay, tasks. So, I better speed up a little bit. We're going to dwell here for a little bit because this is a big part of managing our properties. And there's a lot to talk about. So under the tasks tab, we can track all of our planned tasks and work completed on our properties. We use a pretty detailed list of activity codes, which you can see some of over here to track our work. These match with both our timesheets again and our finance system. And so that's how we do it, but this list is customizable. Some of the other land trusts have like, 2 or 4 or a dozen activity codes that make sense for them. So that's a list that is totally custom for you. I'm happy to share a ridiculous list because I love it in some ways. And in this view, you can see here is our list of tasks related to Mill Creek Ridge. I've clicked on this one and I can see sort of the work summary that Kate or Sonoy have entered for this work. I can also see the dates and the hours associated and any specific notes that they put in with that particular day of work. And I can also see any files. So here we're seeing photos. This is pretty typical. We go out and do some work and we are always now, especially now that our cameras are phones, there's always a lot of pictures and we can just drop them right in there. We can click on them and expand. I would also say that I use this a lot for adding my contracts. So when I have contractors do work, I can just drop their contract. I can drop a copy of their invoice or any other spray logs that they have. And it's just a really nice and easy way for me to be able to go back and find that information because I'm usually, pirating it for the next contract. Here's just, I wanted to show you how easy it is to add a task. So this, I've just clicked on, it's hidden here, but there's just a little plus sign. I've clicked on this. You can see this is a new work task. So that means I've gone out and I've done something and I want to document it. You can see this planning button right here. I can click on that and switch it to the planning form. And all this means is that, I haven't done this yet, and it gives me some other tools available. So I can assign it or add some other and fill out some other fields around, when do I want this done? When is this planned for? Some different optional things. I can add deliverables, etc. Here is another view of how we can look at our work. So this is a day view, a date view. And this is compiling things. So particularly for times when we're going out and doing more than one thing in a day, this can be really handy. And I can actually just click on this add work button right here. And this is going to pop open all of the open tasks for me. My guess is that a lot of these are not open anymore and need to be closed, but maybe Kate was planning ahead and she has all these awesome tasks in here. And I can just click on one, it'll pop open in the preview pane here, and I can just add hours and any notes. So it's a pretty handy way if you're doing a bunch of stuff all at once. Let's see. Oh, this I wanted to show. So I wanted to remind folks, we have access to our tasks over here in our personal user pane too. And so here I had this task that I had assigned, that I had created for myself. And I don't always put tasks like this in Ouzel, at least I haven't so far, although I think I probably will more and more. But here I have one that I wanted to not lose track of, which is, hey, I need to email our mowing contractor because we renew his contract by email every year. And so I put this in here. I was able to say, you need to do it by this date. And now that it's done, I was able to just go in and drop the email in here with the renewal. And it's all just right there for me. Super handy. And then I feel like I had, yeah, and that, oh, right. And so the other thing is I can just do that all right here from my user pane, which is really cool. So I can see my list of, here's the stuff I need to do. Oh, shoot, I did that. Let me just take care of it really quickly, which is very nice. We can also add deliverables. So one that you'll have seen previously is our veg control deliverable. So you see here, Sonoy went out, she sprayed shiny geranium, and our vegetation control deliverable, which is just you know, a form to have users enter other stuff, popped up for her. So she was able to fill out her veg control. This was herbicide. So in this instance, so there was a lot more data. We use this to track all of our herbicide logs too, so we don't now have to do it separate. Again, that idea of having fewer things to go to document our work. Here are her target weeds, here are the chemicals she used, and then there's a little map in there so she can put where she sprayed. And this is just an aerial view of that same map. We can also make the deliverable optional. So here we had a planting and maintenance activity. So we're doing some work on planting. That includes that deliverable because sometimes we're spraying rings or doing other weed control, but this particular task didn't require it. So I was able to just go in and delete it saying, no, we don't need to do that. And it's also flexible. So for example, going back to this mowing contract task, I could have required a deliverable of a document to remind myself, hey, I want myself to put this document in here. Or if I was asking someone else to do it, to help remind them, do this other thing. So there's just a tremendous amount of flexibility that helps us easily enter stuff. It's really quite great. Oh, I just wanted to visit this again to show you some other tools. So here's, again, here are our activity codes. I'm going to add a veg control task. And here I've done it. And I'm planning this task saying, hey, please go do this work. Here's where I want you to do it. Just this nice little spatial element here. And now it's in there. And for whoever's going to go do that, they have that reference, which is nice. Oh, and then again, the sidebar, so we've added these filters. So in here, I just added a quick filter for tasks assigned to Sonoy. So here's one, we're just on Mill Creek Ridge, so there's only one, but I can also do the same thing in the global task workspace. So you can see up here that we've moved out of a property and we're just in that global tasks space. And here are all of the tasks assigned to Sonoy here. So just another handy way. And of course, those for her would also show up in her user pane and to give her easy access to those things. Okay, oh, I better start talking faster. Issues and restrictions. Okay. So here is a list of all of the issues linked to a property. We can see some details over here in the detail pane. We can see whether they're resolved or not. Here we can add a new issue. Again, we have types, and this allows us, again, to define what type of information do we want to or need to track related to this issue. Are there particular steps? So here I've added a test issue, a quick description. I've selected the type of issue, which is going to help define this list. So this is just like the acquisition projects and monitoring, we have a checklist. And then we have this workspace over here, drop a contact. That perpetrating sounds kind of intense. Here, propose a remedy. So stuff to do here, the tools to do it over here, or document it as it were. In the end, once this is all done, you can generate an issue report, which provides the summary of all the work done and all of the notes that you've taken. And then depending on what your records policy is, you can deal with it. I was actually just trying to remember this morning if we are still putting our easement issues, violations offsite or not, but we're more and more migrating to changing our procedures that Ouzel is our offsite storage, and then we save a copy to our server. So you can see there's this little print button. It would just drop a document for me to put on my server. And then issues can be related to restrictions or are related to restrictions. And so this is the restrictions, sources, restrictions, and approval space. So these are the restrictions on this property. This is a fee property. So I think of this as encumbrances, restrictions, and agreements, all under the heading of restrictions. And so that means that, there is another entity has an easement on our property. We have, this is we need to improve some of these typings, or I need to update my data, but this is a lease agreement. And so everything is just kind of all in here. And then our issues could be linked to that. This shows us the source documents for that. So the source might be the management plan, right? Per our management and our understanding of responsible management, these things aren't permitted. Or, this is an agreement, this is an easement document, etc. And then we can track our approvals in here. So you can see Kate is tracking some of her approvals. That I think in this case, it says management plan, but this is an easement. So it's probably, anyway, doesn't matter. But anyway, we can track all of that here. And again, this space is blank right now, but we'll be adding some filter and summarizing tools in there, because as we think about this as over time in perpetuity, we're going to need tools to deal with the tremendous amount of information. Okay, back to acquisition projects. So this is this little tab here. This is back to that Mill Creek property with the 5 acquisitions so far. There's still more happening, and showing those related projects. Here you can see I've clicked on one, I've clicked on Krautmann, I can see the preview here, I can see a lot of the deliverables from that project coming through. So where there's just text, it's coming right through. If there was a document here, I could click on it and preview it. So really easy access to all of the things that are linked, or I can always click here and go to the whole project and kind of zoom around and dig for what I'm looking for. Super easy. This is just showing how we can link a new project. So if we close on yet another project here, we just quick link it, and now it's associated with our property. Same with parcels. So here is our parcel space. Sorry, this is showing key parcel information here. Again, in this preview, we have these tabs. This is showing our payments. We track our tax payments on all of our properties here in Ouzel and generate our invoices for finance out of that. In fact, I'm going to start that this afternoon. And here is a map of the spatial area related to this particular parcel. Oh, and you can see, I'm just going to point this out really quickly. So we've added, where'd it go? We've added these filters. Chris just added them yesterday. So some of my screenshots don't have them, but quick, easy ways to filter and group the parcels, because if you have a lot of parcels associated with your property, it can be handy to be able to group them. Okay, monitoring. So under our monitoring tab, this space is growing. We have our annual monitoring reports. We have weed monitoring or veg monitoring, which I'll touch on later. And then elements and photo points are related to our monitoring. Here's our list of monitoring visits for this particular property with a little bit of information. Again, we can click on a row and see more. Here is a monitoring reports dashboard. Again, we can customize this based on various things and really think about what do we need to see here. The beef of monitoring happens in this work tab here. So again, a checklist. I've clicked on all just to show everything, but we have ours phased. And then here you can see you have the thing, the row, which is a task, and then you have the tools to do your work over here. So here Sonoy has filled out her site visit. She's dropped in additional photos related to the site, to the monitoring visit that were not photo point photos. And you just go through and do all of your monitoring report work in here. And then generate your monitoring report. Right in Ouzel, we can now sign them and save them and everything right within this system, and then download one that we put on our server for our records policy. Same for photo points. You'll notice that this report looks a little bit different. So Chris is doing a bunch of work to make our reports both prettier and giving us more control over how they render, what kind of information, how we want them to page break and that sort of thing. So you can see this is starting to look a lot nicer, but the old one works just fine. And so here you can see we put our photo points, I'll show you the space, but we put our photo points right in that monitoring report tool, and that it just creates a report for us. And if you're like us, you used to do a lot of that manually, and this is incredible. So here are our monitoring elements, and this is showing an easement. And so in this case, these elements are tied directly to the restrictions and reserved rights for this property. They would look a little different on a fee property, and they're all customizable. So we have a kind of a standard suite that we start with for our fee properties, but then managers can go in and add, edit, remove, et cetera, to create the elements that they think are critical for tracking on that property. So for example, it doesn't make sense to have like an infrastructure element if there's no infrastructure on the property. And then over here in this workspace, we can see the observations over time. And that gets populated in your monitoring report. But one thing that I wanted to show is just a quick view of it also in our mobile. So these same monitoring elements come right into Ouzel mobile, and you can see the historical entries, and then you can also add a quick entry. And this was pretty handy. So recently I was out at a property, that Woods Landing property, that's a group of properties all together. And the easement landowner had told me that she had had some tree work done. And so while I was out there, I was able to, while it was fresh in my mind, just go fill out a little element from my phone, take a couple pictures. And even though I haven't done her monitoring yet, I can create my monitoring project such that it will just suck that observation that I took right in here. So now when I do her monitoring, I'll remember I already did this. Maybe there's something else I want to observe, but I can have multiple observations, which is pretty handy. This is the photo point workspace. So here you can see, here are our photo points. We could click on any of these and it would zoom us to that particular photo point. These are our locations, and then these are our, ABCD views. We can start to see the pictures over time. You can drop them right in here. So you can work in this photo point workspace within the property, or it makes it very easy to fill them out in your monitoring report. And you may have noticed on the pull down, there's actually a beta. So this is getting kind of a bit of an overhaul that's going to make it even easier, believe it or not. You can click on them to see the picture larger. And then one of the things that's on our short list is adding some other tools to more easily compare photos over time, so that we can really do that comparison as we're processing our monitoring. Okay, really quickly, veg monitoring. So this is totally new to me. So this is a great example of Chelan Douglas Land Trust, who is a user of Ouzel, decided they wanted and needed this veg monitoring tools for their work, because this is something, they have a tremendous amount of veg data. They're actively doing weed mapping, and they wanted to be able to migrate, knowing that we had mobile, this was a few months ago. But knowing that we had mobile coming imminently, they wanted to shift from collector, which staff were kind of not jiving with, to be able to use Ouzel mobile to do this work, and then have it go right into Ouzel. So again, bringing things together instead of having all these different separate tools. And so this is shown, so they contracted with Chris, he was able to build this out for them, and now it's available to all of us. So we haven't used it yet, but so this is Chelan Douglas's data, but you can see here, this is showing filtered for white top, shows the properties and some other information. We have the overview, observation, species list, control events, etc. over here. You can see an individual patch here with the related data. You can see, so this is an observation, so it's showing the date, the species, and abundance. And then in here, I'm pointing as if you can see me. In here, you can add any notes. And then you can see, here's an observation right here. So you would see the list of observations over time, and control events too. So there's some herbicide work that has happened on these patches, this patch. So here is the data related to that. And just like you saw earlier with Sonoy's shiny geranium work, here is that veg control event form tracking all of that information. This is a spatial view of some of their veg patches. So this is, again, through that, we're in that properties map space. And here are all their monitoring patches. And then you can see they also have cool trail data. So again, you can put all of your data right here in front of you. This is again showing that patch data just in the global map that we have in Ouzel, and then showing, wherever you have spatial data, you can click on it and access some of the same kind of stuff. So it's pretty handy. Okay, wow, we're doing okay. So these are the last few tabs in this workspace. Are documents, notes, and what did I say? Documents, notes, and photos. So here are our documents, and you can see, again, this is bringing documents in from all of the related stuff or documents added directly to the project. So we have some control over that here. You can see here, I have them grouped by their parent. So this is one of the acquisition projects. This is the monitoring report. Here, they're grouped by document type. So if you're looking for a deed, but you don't remember the name of the acquisition project, whatever, you can group them in those different ways. And then photos. So these are any photos related, that you put in work that are not non-photo point photos come in here. And so you can just scroll down. It's pretty lovely. And we have yet to add tools for this, but we've talked about this could grow pretty large over time. So how to, add some easy tools to help us search and manage for that. And then notes. So you can see here that certain tools in some of our monitoring projects are a notes tool. And so they come right into here. So our monitoring recommendations come right into here. I can see down here that there was a project related note, but also this is the space that you can just add notes, pictures, etc. And so this is sort of a catch-all space for something that you don't know where else to put it. Like maybe you want to make a note and we don't have that space yet. Like we have plans to have species observations, but we don't have it yet. Maybe you want to put that in here. Maybe, whatever the case may be. And then the idea is that we can kind of look at this over time. And if we're seeing, we're adding a lot of this type of information, does it make sense for us to build something separate that sort of brings that together? So, but we left this because sometimes you just want to put a note. So that's it. And with that, that is it. 110 slides, did it. So what questions do you have? And let me see if I can, let's see, it looks like Chris has been answering them. Does Ouzel include the web mapping capability? Yes, it does. It's all included. And we also don't, some other systems have different cost tiering based on either number of users or number of properties. We just have one cost at this point for everything. Contact information linked to Salesforce. So yes, we can link. I did forget to share that with the contacts in that workspace on the right. If you were linked to Salesforce or Razor's Edge or any of the other donor databases, that would be a space where you could add additional custom tabs or fields to show whatever you wanted to show. We had started that process, but we really need to, we're between advancement directors again. And so we need to explore that ability a little bit more. Water right. Yeah, so does Ouzel do any rights tracking? So right, Chris is right. So this would be a right or restriction. And Peyton, let me know if you have any questions about that after that. But I think that we have talked about adding in a way, and we're still figuring out exactly how to do it, where if there's a reporting requirement or like a notification requirement, for example, we have some monitoring reports where there's a partner And like just for those properties, we send copies of our monitoring reports to those entities. And so, right now we just have this catch-all. Hey, if there's anyone you need to send the letter to or the report to, send it to them. But we want to be able to just have that checklist item show up for properties where it's relevant. And this would be similar, right? So how do you make that happen? We also will have the ability to, as we build out sort of the management plan part of things, say, these are recurring activities that have to occur. So say, every year I have a couple properties where I have to send in an annual report by a certain date, right? This would be a great place to be able to just have it create that task for me every year due on the same time, with a reminder of every year I have to look up like, what's the weird email address that I have to send it to. So this is a place that can house all of that. And part of it is, how do we take all of these little pieces that are living in, not just our server, but in people's brains or institutional history, and put them in a place where, over time, as staff transition, or if the one person who knows that piece of information isn't available for you to ask, it's here for you. So that, that's a big goal here. Can you explain the process it would take to transfer a mixture of GIS data and data in Salesforce? Right now we have a database in Salesforce that has detailed information. Also it houses links to documents, transfer the data. Right, so yeah, that would be, data transfer would be a conversation about via onboarding. And I will say that Chris is sort of a data magician, like he can do amazing things with chaos. So, it's been, even for us who were migrating from an existing, our old lands database, right? It takes a couple iterations of, are these things going to the right places? But way better than Pete and I see are concerned about building up from scratch. Any data that you have, we should be able to talk about how to get it into Ouzel. And we've done other things, like a couple of land trusts had started to clean up, for example, their contacts or their properties, their acquisition projects and data, and they put it all into a spreadsheet, and we were able to just suck that in various ways. So there's a lot of ways that we can deal with that kind of thing. And I think, as Chris said, Salesforce has an API. All these places have, or all these applications have APIs. So there's a lot that can be done. And there is also data that will have to be entered. We had a volunteer who worked with us. She came in weekly for like a year for a couple hours, so it was slow. And we went through every single acquisition project that we had over time, and like we asked her to put these key pieces of data into, this was in our old lands database, into the old lands database. And then staff worked with her where it was confusing, but now it's there. We're able to just bring it over into Ouzel when we migrated ourselves. And so there is that balance of, definitely, if you have it digitally, let's figure out how to get it in, and then you can start to identify what are the other things that we really need to dedicate some either staff or volunteer effort over time to get in, to help us have all of this stuff in one place. What other questions do we have? Let's see. I'm eating an Oreo. Anything else? Anybody else have anything? We have 3 minutes left. While we're waiting, I will add that I'm sure you all know this at this point, but we have 2 more scheduled webinars. Annual monitoring is next, where we'll go more deeply into that project and we can go through all the different steps. And then a little more deeply into tasks and work specifically. It looks like I have that on there twice, so that's a typo on our website. But these other ones, property issues and violations, acquisition projects, data reports, all of these are coming. We just haven't scheduled them yet. And so feel free to reach out if you have any specific questions. If anybody feels really strongly about those ones that haven't been scheduled yet, you feel like I need to see that sooner rather than later, let us know. You're also going to get an email after this session asking you to fill out a quick survey. That would be super helpful if you have a minute. It should be fast. And I think that's it. If any questions come up, please feel free to email or call. We are always happy to talk Ouzel. And yeah, we can always demo other aspects if you're starting to get serious about considering whether this is a right fit for you. Just let us know. Anything else, Chris?
Sorry. No, I'm good.
All right. This was recorded, hopefully. And so we'll send this out too if you want to share it with anyone. It'll get posted to our website down there on the bottom, columbialandtrust.org/Ouzel. And I think some of you, at least, we will see in a couple weeks at our monitoring talk. Thanks, everyone. And stop recording.